Autumn in a small town in Colorado always arrived quietly. The leaves turned yellow, the air grew cool, and evenings carried the soft smell of smoke from fireplaces. It seemed like nothing could disturb that calm. But calm is only an illusion when money enters the game. Mark Donovan, 38, worked as a financial consultant. He was the kind of man people described as reliable. A calm voice, an attentive gaze, and a habit of always keeping his word. People trusted him with their savings, their plans for the future, and sometimes even their fears. And the person who trusted him most was his friend, Thomas Reed. They had met at university. Thomas was Mark's complete opposite, loud, charismatic, and a little reckless. If Mark counted every dollar, Thomas saw every dollar as an opportunity. And one evening Thomas walked into Mark's office with a spark in his eyes. "Mark, my friend," he said, dropping into the chair, "I've got a chance. A big one." "That sounds dangerous," Mark replied with a faint smile. "An investment. A startup in Texas. Next generation energy. If this works, we're going to rise." Mark was used to Thomas's ideas. But this time his friend seemed serious. "How much?" Mark asked. $500,000. Mark let out a quiet whistle. "And you want me to help me find investors? People trust you." Silence filled the room. Mark looked out the window where the wind swirled leaves across the parking lot. "Thomas," he said slowly, "I can't risk my client's money." "It's not a risk. It's a chance. In business, that's the same thing." Thomas stood up and paced around the office. "You've always been too careful. And you've always been too bold." They laughed. The tension eased a little. In the end, Mark agreed to help find private investors. Not his clients, only people who understood the risk. 3 months passed. And then everything disappeared. The company in Texas stopped responding. The website was gone. Phones were silent. The money vanished. When Mark walked into his office that morning, 3 messages from investors were waiting on his desk. And one from Thomas. "Mark, I need a little time." His hands grew cold. "Damn," he whispered. That evening Mark drove to Thomas's house. The lights were on. Thomas himself opened the door. He looked like he hadn't slept for days. "I knew you'd come," he said quietly. "Where's the money?" Thomas ran a hand over his face. "Everything went wrong." "Where is the money?" "It's gone." Silence. Mark stared at him for a long time. "You stole it." Thomas suddenly lifted his head. "No." "Then explain." "It was a scam," Thomas whispered. "I believed in it myself." Mark laughed. But there was no joy in that laughter. "You're telling me we were scammed?" "Yes." "And you didn't check anything?" Thomas said nothing. "You destroyed my reputation," Mark said quietly. "I'll get the money back. $500,000. I'll find a way." Mark looked at his old friend. "You know they'll sue." "I know. And you know I'll be the one blamed." Thomas slowly nodded. Then suddenly he said, "That's exactly why I came to you." Mark frowned. "What?" Thomas smiled. A very strange smile. "Because I knew you'd do anything to protect your reputation." "What are you talking about?" Thomas opened his laptop on the table. "Look." On the screen was a list of bank transfers. Mark leaned closer. His heart froze. The transfers were coming from his own account. "That's impossible." Thomas looked at him calmly. "Actually, it's very possible. You framed me." "No, Mark." He paused. "I just gave you an opportunity." "An opportunity for what?" "To become who you always wanted to be." Mark slammed the laptop shut. "You've lost your mind." Thomas chuckled softly. "Or maybe you just haven't understood yet." "Understood what?" Thomas leaned forward. "That the money was never actually lost." Mark froze. "It's on another account," Thomas said. "Safe." "Why?" "Because I wanted to test you." "Test me?" When a man works with other people's money for years, sooner or later the temptation appears. Mark slowly sat down. You think I'm a thief? I think you're human. Thomas opened another file. The account balance. $500,000. They're here, he said. Mark stared at the numbers. And suddenly, he smiled. Slowly. You're right, Thomas. About what? About temptation. Thomas frowned. What do you mean? Mark pulled out his phone and pressed one button. Hello, Detective Harper? Yes, he's here. Thomas jumped to his feet. What did you do? Mark looked at him calmly. 3 weeks ago I realized the investment was fake. What? And that you were behind it? Thomas turned pale. You're bluffing. Mark shook his head. You forgot one thing. What? I'm a financial consultant. He leaned closer. I checked the money. Sirens sounded in the distance. Thomas whispered. You knew everything. Yes. And you let me continue. Yes. Why? Mark stood up and quietly said, because sometimes the only way to learn the truth about a friend is to give him enough rope. The sirens stopped outside the house. Someone knocked on the door. Mark looked at Thomas. And sometimes, he added, betrayal costs more than money.